Good evening, everyone. I'm Jim Ogle, the Executive Director for Freedom's Frontier National Heritage Area. Welcome to our continuing series of programs on the National Park Service's Underground Railroad Network to Freedom. A few housekeeping items for you as participants. Our panelists will present to you tonight about Constitution Hall in Topeka and its important role that it plays on the network to freedom. As you watch the presentation, you may find that a question comes to mind. There are two ways to ask your questions. The first is to click on the question and answer button, usually located at the bottom of your screen. You can type your question in there, and I'll be happy to add those to our discussion. You can also ask your question on your own. To do so, click the raise your hand. I'll call on you and open both your audio and video if you turn on your camera. So as the mood strikes you, please ask your questions. Now I'd like to take just a moment to share with you about Freedom's Frontier National Heritage Area and this Underground Railroad project we have underway. The mission of Freedom's Frontier is to tell the stories of the struggle of freedom in our region and their lasting impact on our nation. Now, what are those stories we tell? Well, one of them is the Missouri-Kansas border war. Another, settling the frontier. And the third, the enduring struggle for freedom. Now, we're located across 29 counties in eastern Kansas and 12 counties in western Missouri, a total of 41 counties, 3 million people, 30,000 square miles. About the size of the state of South Carolina. We have 185 partners who have historic sites or museums to visit in the area. Now, our map provides a simple tool to help you find and discover some of those stories at those different partner sites. But we've also created a new tool in use with the National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom. That's the Freedom Frontier app. And I want to share that with you now.
Sometimes the most important stories aren't widely told. Sometimes what matters the most remains a secret, even if it's right in front of us. There's a place that defined the history of our nation, where patriots fighting for freedom gained victories that lasted through the years to secure equal freedoms for all Americans. We're talking about the Freedom's Frontier National Heritage Area. If you didn't know you had such a place around you, the FFNHA app is for you. You'll discover important historic sites and museums, all connected to tell the remarkable stories that shaped our nation. The settlement of the frontier, the border war and civil war, and the enduring struggle for freedom. Thanks to our easy-to-use app, you'll find tours and amazing places to visit that bring the region together and make it come alive. Visit the App Store or the Google Play Store. Download the FFNHA app and discover the stories that changed a nation. Enjoy the ride. History awaits.
We hope you'll download the Freedom's Frontier app. And as you can see on the front screen of the app here, take the International Underground Railroad Network to Freedom tour. We showcase the various sites that are on the Network to Freedom in the Freedom's Frontier area. We also make it possible for you to collect digital passport stamps provided by the National Park Service for visitors who want to be safe in these COVID-19 times by visiting the area, learning about it, but at the same time, keeping their social distancing. We hope you'll want to collect them all. And here's an example of one of those stamps. And for those of you attending tonight, we'll be sharing a stamp for you as well for Constitution Hall. You can download the app in the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. So let's start our program by bringing in our guests. I'm thrilled that we have two eminent Topekans to participate in tonight's program. They are Doug Wallace, who is a historian without parallel here in the city of Topeka and for Shawnee County. Each time I introduce you, Doug, it becomes more and more significant. And Chris Meinhardt, who I'm thrilled to say has been the leader on the project team for Constitution Hall and is a past president of the Friends of the Free State Capitol. And I want to invite them to begin their program and to share with you about Constitution Hall. Chris, Doug, it's yours.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. And to Freedom's Frontier National Heritage Area for this opportunity to visit. Community volunteers are preserving Topeka's Constitution Hall. The nonprofit Friends of the Free State Capitol is restoring this native stone landmark located at 429 South Kansas Avenue, just 5 blocks north of the present state capitol. We thank historians Doug Wallace and Don Lambert. Doug will speak with you shortly. Restoration planning has led to research on the building, its events, and its people. We will highlight 1, national conditions for Free State efforts in Topeka, which range of activities was called the Topeka Movement. 2, its significant events in Constitution Hall. And 3, the role of the building in regional underground railroad. We'll conclude about the Crossroads to Freedom Pocket Park, sponsored by the Topeka Rotary Clubs, and progress toward building restoration. Looking today across the original town plat of Topeka, only Constitution Hall still stands to tell us that 165 years ago, the new town was a hotbed of abolitionist and anti-slavery fervor. This can be astonishing when considering that pro-slavery forces were in control of the territory and resolute that Kansas become a slave state. Free state leaders, however, were highly dedicated to development of a free state government. The New York Times and other national newspapers sent reporting correspondence. This news illustration of the Topeka Constitutional Convention appeared in Leslie's Illustrated Journal, December 15, 1855. And just months later, the 1856 dispersal of the Topeka legislature was climactic in the history of bleeding Kansas. Constitution Hall was intended to be a commercial building at its start in early 1855. However, due to regional strife over slavery, it was abandoned before completion. In late spring, the Topeka Town Association arranged to resume its construction in exchange for holding the Free State Constitutional Convention there. We'll come back to the convention, but for the moment, the building became the capital of the Free State Territorial Government. Here, Kansas pioneers took the dangerous step of writing a constitution banning slavery. James Lane, later the first U.S. Senator from Kansas, was president of the convention. Cyrus K. Holliday, later a founder of the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad, was a delegate. It was Holliday who arranged to complete Constitution Hall. You may be wondering, does this relate with the Constitution Hall located in nearby Lecompton, Kansas? And why was Kansas so significant to the question of slavery? We hope that just a bit of national historical background helps explain why we are restoring the Constitution Hall here in Topeka. In the mid-1850s, the nation's political leaders concluded that as Kansas would go on the slavery question, so would go the nation. This was because voting power in the Congress was then evenly divided between pro-slavery and anti-slavery states. Could Missouri and other pro-slavery states swing Kansas to their side, or could the New England and other anti-slavery states prevail? The outcome of Kansas tipping this balance of power either way would impact every aspect of daily life for centuries to come. Each side's efforts to win Kansas began just after the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. President Franklin Pierce began by establishing a pro-slavery Kansas territorial government in nearby Lecompton. The Constitution Hall in Lecompton is thus historically associated with pro-slavery forces. In March 1855, pro-slavery voters, many of them living in nearby Missouri, elected pro-slavery representatives. This they did by excluding Free Staters and stuffing the ballot boxes in Free State towns. In response, Free Staters organized and then proposed a representative government. In Constitution Hall, the Constitution for Kansas proclaimed there shall be no slavery in this state, which was carried to Congress where it passed only in the House of Representatives. If the Senate had voted like the House, Kansas would have entered the Union, a free state, in 1856, rather than 5 years later in 1861. By this time, several of the slave states had seceded from the Union. The South lost control of the Senate. The immediate result was that the Congress voted for Kansas to enter the Union as a free state. Doug Wallace will now highlight events of Constitution Hall.
The building itself was a major accomplishment on the thin, open prairie. It was brand new, less than a year old. It had just been chartered, and all the only other structures in town were tents. All building materials had to be found on site or transported from afar. Limestone for the bearing walls was taken from a ravine behind the building. Lumber was milled from timber taken from the Kansas River. The New England Immigrant Aid Society had provided the steam saw that ran poorly. The deep swirling cuts of the blade are present today, floor joists. Farm implements were cut to be used as framing members. Now, the outrageous results from that pro-slavery election in March of 1855 forced Kansas settlers who opposed extension of slavery to organize. A series of meetings in late summer and early fall led to the Topeka Constitutional Convention in late October. The roof was on and windows finally in. Over 40 delegates from around the territory attended. Among them was Samuel F. Tappan, a member from a prominent New England abolitionist family. Tappan was clerk of the Topeka Constitutional Convention, assistant clerk of the House of Representatives in 1856, and the following year performed the duties of Speaker of Topeka's Legislative House of Representatives. Topeka was in the Constitution. Their Constitution establishes the temporary capital for Free State voters. Free State voters accepted the Topeka Constitution, elected legislators, and Charles Robinson of Lawrence was governor-elect. The legislature met briefly in March of 1856, but then adjourned to the 4th of July of that same year, Independence Day. Obvious a symbol of the desire for freedom as one could get. But the Free State government had angered President Franklin Pierce, who, through his Secretary of War, Jefferson Davis, ordered troops from Fort Riley and Fort Leavenworth under command of Colonel Edwin Sumner to disperse what was in the president's mind a treasonous assembly. Morning of July 4th, 1856, dawned sunny and hot. Free State officials and citizens from all over the territory mingled in front of Constitution Hall, anxious as to what Colonel Sumner would do in the noon hour. Soon, federal troops on horseback appeared on the southern horizon. With them, 2 cannons. Colonel Sumner dismounted and entered the House of Representatives, House chamber, where, in addressing the assembly, simply stated, "Gentlemen, I am called upon this day to perform the most painful duty of my life. Under authority of the President's proclamation, I am here to disperse this legislature, and I therefore inform you that you cannot meet." He did the same before the Senate. After brief conversations, Colonel Sumner returned to his troops, mounted, and with those troops rode off to the south. As he passed, the crowd gave 3 cheers for Colonel Sumner, but 3 groans for President Pierce. This day, among Topeka streets named for the presidents of the United States, there is no Pierce Street. Clay Street is named for, in its place, political rival Henry Clay. Old John Brown and his sons were scattered nearby. However, the firm but calm presence of Colonel Sumner eased the tense situation that could have exploded. Shot fired on or by the troops might have launched America into civil war on Kansas Avenue in front of Constitution Hall 5 years before the shots were fired at Fort Sumter. That evening, tranquility and in celebration, though, reigned over Topeka. The citizens in this frontier village enjoyed a 4th of July entertainment in the upper room of Constitution Hall that had just seen, just hours before, great history. During Topeka's formative years, Constitution Hall served many functions. It was a city hall, a house of worship for many new churches, a social gathering hall, a place of temporary refuge for people escaping slavery. And downstairs were the shops. In the basement, storage of supplies for this free state settlement. For all its meaning and symbolism as a free state landmark, it's not surprising that after statehood, Constitution Hall had one more role to play. Freedom's cause during the Civil War. It became the capital for the state of Kansas, 1864 to 1869, during the construction of the permanent Capitol building 5 blocks south on Capitol Square. Now we'll return to Chris, who will talk about the highlights of the underground movement and the Underground Railroad.
Thank you, Doug. Constitution Hall was headquarters and operation of the area's Underground Railroad. We learned of this while researching how to restore the building. Although few of the area's Underground Railroad stories have survived, there is a good amount of archival information and almost surely more to be found. The pro-slavery Kansas territorial government, known as the bogus legislature because it was largely elected by people who did not live in Kansas, made assistance to people escaping slavery punishable by death. In this historical image, Lady Liberty is protecting Constitution Hall from attack by pro-slavery forces. Many who came to settle in Kansas did so to take a stand against slavery, and quite a few were abolitionists. While the Free State Legislature met in Constitution Hall, the building was headquarters for operation of the Lane Trail as a free trade route from the north into Kansas, when eastern riverboat travel was blockaded by pro-slavery forces, and land travel was challenged by these forces along the Oregon Trail. It was later that the Lane Trail came into use by John Brown and area conductors, Native people escaping slavery to freedom in the North and Canada. We have mentioned that Jim Lane, who established the trail, was president of the Anti-Slavery Topeka Constitutional Convention. We have learned that each enslaved person began his or her flight to freedom by deciding to become free. This was typically against insurmountable odds. It was said that these enslaved people seemed to disappear, as if on a railroad that ran underground. In Topeka, Underground Railroad conductor Cyrus Flanders later wrote that he called his work undergrounding. As a free trade route to Kansas, the Lane Trail ran west from Chicago into Iowa, then southeast through Nebraska, and south to Topeka, thereby skirting the pro-slavery state of Missouri. By 1857, Kansas pioneers were using the trail in aid of people escaping slavery. In Constitution Hall, Topeka area Underground Railroad conductors organized support for escapes and meetings disguised as Congregational, Methodist, and Quaker services. To avoid slave catchers, travel began in the night by crossing the Kansas River just 4 blocks to the north. Although Lane marked the trail with stone pilings to serve as guideposts, the trail's isolation made it an ideal route for escapes. It is estimated that over 1,000 people, at the risk of capture and death, were aided in escapes northward over the Lane Trail. Lead Topeka conductor John Armstrong, who lived in the Scales family cabin just 200 feet east of Constitution Hall, later told that he helped at least 300 people escape northward through Topeka. During construction of this cabin, a large sugar storage barrel was placed in the basement. Armstrong later told that he sometimes hid people inside the barrel before they could continue more safely on their freedom journey. One of these was Ann Clark, about 40 years old when she escaped. Heading through Nebraska City, she crossed the Missouri River to the home of Ira Blanchard, who sent her onward to freedom in Chicago. Conductor Daniel Horn, financial agent for Underground Railroad operations, had his office in the basement of Constitution Hall. His April 1857 newspaper advertisement announced storage, commission, and forwarding. These were code words for providing Underground Railroad assistance to people escaping slavery. Joseph Miller, resident and shopkeeper in Constitution Hall, served as treasurer for the Underground Railroad. He stored arms and ammunition here to defend the Lane Trail against slave catchers. We note this informal brochure about the Underground Railroad in Kansas, produced by volunteers about 10 years ago. Many local historians throughout eastern Kansas contributed their own research. John Brown, who crusaded to abolish slavery, helped in directing escapes through Kansas. Among his Topeka area colleagues were Daniel Sheridan, John Ritchie, Jacob Willits, and Don Kagi. The first Underground Railroad safe house north of Topeka on the Lane Trail was conductor William Owen's cabin. Samuel and Jane Harper were among people escaping slavery who were aided at the Owens cabin on their way to Canada. Constitution Hall is listed by the National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom program. Many of you will know that among the work of this National Park Service program is recognizing sites with verifiable connections to people escaping slavery. This listing has been very valuable to progress in restoring Constitution Hall. In 2008, this building was listed in the National Register of Historic Places, which nomination was supported by a record of Underground Railroad activities. Among what's important to us in restoring Constitution Hall for its role in the Underground Railroad is that in opposition to federal and territorial laws in the 1850s, Kansas settlers met here to support people's actions to be free and to make the nation freer. We hope that our community, in restoring the place where important events happened in their city, will help tell future generations about important strides in gaining freedoms for all. We'll conclude by describing the Topeka Rotary Club's downtown pocket park and about building restoration progress. In this pocket park, named Crossroads to Freedom, visitors can learn about the history we've just highlighted. Interpretation is on boards hung from a structure that also supports live plants year-round. The Topeka Rotary Clubs, taking part in renewal efforts for the downtown in 2016, proposed and funded the pocket park. A partially demolished building had stood here for several decades. When its demolition was completed in 2012, the opportunity of a park became apparent. Friends of the Free State Capitol was honored to work with Topeka Rotary. The iron stairway to the second floor of Constitution Hall has become a much-liked feature of the park. The park is named Crossroads to Freedom, for right across the avenue is the old federal building. This is where the downtown post office is today. It was there in the old federal courtroom in 1951 that the federal portion of trials leading to the landmark Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court decision was heard. This decision prohibited racial segregation in public education. Interpretive signage includes a large board telling about the Supreme Court case and its Topeka origins. The 19th century Underground Railroad is regarded as a predecessor of the 20th century civil rights movement, for which the Brown case, Supreme Court decision, is a major event. A century apart in time, decisions in these two buildings, one across from the other on South Kansas Avenue, speak of important gains in the struggle for freedoms for all. Park signage includes the Lane Trail to Freedom, and the pocket park is open to visit any time. Friends of the Free State Capitol acquired Constitution Hall in 1998 and has continued to focus on its restoration. This is what the rear or west side looked like in 1998 at acquisition. A non-historically significant addition was falling, as was an adjacent building. Once these two structures were removed, the original west face of the building was restored. On this side of the building are two basement rooms used in operation of the Lane Trail. Inside the building, the century-and-a-half-old floor joists are strong, but their capacity does not meet today's building codes. It was decided to install steel support, the least intrusive of options. The current restoration project is the original 1855 facade, which is in progress. Its completion is anticipated in the summer of 2021. Until this project started this year, a later era facade had been concealed behind the native stone building. A mural of the original building was painted over the first floor. The restored facade will have native Kansas stone and wood windows that match details of the originals. We close with this Library of Congress glass lantern image of Constitution Hall on the left, depicting the building in 1856, of where Kansas began its journey to statehood, which so contrasts with the ornate domed Kansas Capitol. We envision that school children, travelers, and all who visit in Freedom's Frontier National Heritage Area can tour these two important places, as well as many other local and regional historic sites and landscapes. We again thank you and will be glad to take any questions.
Thank you both so much. Such a wealth of information is so greatly appreciated. Let me first ask you, Chris, how did you first become interested in Constitution Hall?
Well, I'm an architect, and I particularly like old buildings, as many architects do. So I got involved with an organization that's now part of Shawnee County Historical Society. It was called Historic Topeka Incorporated. And that organization observed that the building had come up for demolition. A permit was issued. And so many of us on that board of directors got together and went to the city council and said, hey, we can't do this. This is an important building and holds a lot of opportunity for Topeka. So in short, that's how I got involved, Jim.
And Doug, you've always been had great love of history. Tell me about how you became focused on Constitution Hall.
Well, obviously for a long time I was aware Constitution Hall was somewhere in the 400 block. There's some argument where it exactly was because of the new facade. And I became acquainted with people like the late Robert Johnson, who was the first head of the Friends of the Free State Capitol, and then became acquainted with Chris, kind of thing. And so they brought me on board, kind of thing. Was very happily to do so, and everything. And I too love old buildings, particularly old stone masonry buildings. My great grandfather was a stonemason, so I inherited at least a little bit of that from him, kind of thing. But
that's wonderful. As you tell the story of Constitution Hall, how do you work with other historical presenters? I noticed that you have a variety of people who do first-person presentations at Constitution Hall. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Chris?
Sure. Our greatest resource and a very fine person is the superintendent of the Constitution Hall in Lecompton, Tim Roos. And Tim has been very generous with his time and all his resources as a staff of the Kansas Historical Society to share opportunities to bring reenactors to Constitution Hall in Topeka. For a number of years, some years not, we reenacted the dispersal of the Topeka legislature through Tim Roos's work with the play that he helped develop. So Tim Roos is primarily the individual. However, I want to also mention that our work on the Underground Railroad brochure introduced us to many people in the region and throughout eastern Kansas, really, who had similar connections. And so there have been a lot of ways that we've come into contact with reenactors.
And I'd just like to say that Tim Roos is a dead ringer for James Lane. He's the perfect reenactor for James Lane. He fits him to a T.
Yes.
That's fantastic. What has surprised you most that you've discovered through this renovation process?
Well, go ahead, Doug.
Well, just one of the things that several times in the last few years and everything. And I was down there Saturday mornings in case anybody stopped by. And it's always intriguing to see that people take the time to read the boards from the Rotary Park. They were put up by downtown Topeka Rotary, and taking the time out just to read intently what this spot was all about, kind of thing. That's quite gratifying to see people not simply passing by, but actually stopping and reading the words on the boards.
Yeah, I have your image up again of the old kansascapital.org and the like, the old picture of Constitution Hall, and of course the current State House and the statue on top of it. What do you hope to accomplish through Friends of the Free State Capitol for Constitution Hall after you complete this work in 2021? What do you see the future as holding?
Well, we have a board of directors, roughly 7 to 10 people at any given time, who are very active in thinking about that, Jim. I can't speak directly for them, but I'm aware that we hope to continue to bring school children, as we have over the years, as well as more visitors in the community into the building to hold their events and to learn about the history of the building on boards we'll have inside the building. So that's a very sketchy answer, I'm aware, but that's some of what we hope to accomplish.
Certainly one thing that is intriguing to me is the ability to take a group of people, meet in front of Constitution Hall, look at the primitive character of the structure and everything, and what momentous things happened there, what momentous things happened across the street in the old federal building, and then walk 4 or 5 blocks to the south and a leisurely jaunt kind of thing. And here you see this magnificent State House in Capitol Square and everything, beautiful building, and contrast the history, the events that took place in both the simple, modest structure as well as this grand structure. And it's a marvelous part of storytelling, which is what history is, storytelling.
That's wonderful.
That's a great answer, a great answer. Robert Ford has asked, he wrote in the question and answers that my grandfather, Albert Long Bartlett, son of a delegate, Dr. Josiah Bartlett, was a page in the first legislative session in 1861. I have an article about his experience and would like to give that article to whomever's appropriate. Who should Bob send his article to?
Oh, what a wonderful offer.
Very much so.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Ford. The address, may I give you the address online as we speak?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. The address is Friends of the Free State Capitol, P.O. Box 2551, Topeka 66601. I'll just repeat the post office box, 2551, and the zip code is 66601. We'd be very grateful to have that. We have a phone number that you may contact us as well. That area code is 785-250 or 0, excuse me, 8228. That's 250-8228. If you have any questions or need the address, again, I'd be glad to give it over the phone.
And I would just like to, on a little different note, just mention the tremendous support we got for this project from a non-Kansan, William Seal, the official historian for the White House, who did research on restoration of a number of state capitals, including Kansas's and everything. The late William Seal, who was a marvelous help and support for this group.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Thank you all very much. Well, I think that exhausts our questions now. I do not see any other questions from our viewers. I want to thank you both for making your time available today and the time you put into building such an extraordinary presentation. Thank you all so very, very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim.
And we want to thank you for participating in tonight's program on the old Kansas Capitol, the Friends of the Free State Capitol, and learning more about another site on the National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom. We appreciate you joining us tonight and hope you have a very pleasant evening. Take care.